can never hear you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Are we here? Are we live? Yes.
Hi.
We're live. All right. Well, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lisa Canning, and I am joined by the one and only. What's your name?
Oh. I thought you were gonna introduce me. My name's Josh.
Oh, Josh and I have been married for
13 years.
13 years this past December. And today's video, we are continuing the conversation of mental health in marriage. We are big supporters of an event that is happening today. It is the 11th annual Bell Let's Talk Day. And Bell Let's Talk was a day for Josh and I that encouraged us, or I guess was the impetus or the thing that started us being more vocal and more public about mental illness in our marriage. And so today we're going to tackle several questions that you have sent our way via me on Instagram at Lisa Canning. It's not too late to submit your question if you want to get it answered live here. So feel free to just put it in the comments, or if you want to send it to me privately at Lisa Canning on Instagram, feel free. But we're going to tackle some questions and I guess just really quickly share with you how this came to be in our marriage. So take it away, honey. How did mental illness become a thing in our marriage?
So I had experienced mental illness as a teen before we met each other. We met in our 20s, so I had a background experience of struggling hard with depression in my mid-teens. But I thought that was a thing that was basically, gone. It was in the rear view, and it was like I had kind of outgrown it. But we were married for a number of years and expecting our third child when in 2012, depression kind of snuck up on me again and really blindsided me, because when I looked at it in my teens, I could kind of attribute it to things like developmental or just some different things that were going on in my life that I was like, oh, that's where depression came from. But as a young professional, with a beautiful wife and lovely growing family, it didn't make sense that depression would rear its ugly head. It would just totally blindsided me. And because of that, because everything in my life seemed like it was good, and therefore there should be no reason for anyone to have mental illness in that situation, I felt very ashamed about it. I felt really, really, really bad about it. And it became a kind of a dark secret. I wasn't telling anybody, my closest friends, I wasn't really telling them about it. And so it was hard. It was heavy to carry that. And during that time, I remember a documentary came out that Michael Landsberg, who works with TSN in Canada, it was about athletes who they were sharing their story about having mental illness. And I watched that. I remember seeing it was coming and being excited to watch it, because I saw that people that were successful in life could struggle with mental illness. People that had good health otherwise could still have mental illness. And that made me feel a lot less guilty, a lot less shame about it. So eventually, I was able to kind of transition to a better space mentally. And when the Bell Let's Talk campaign was coming up, I think we took it as almost like invitation to pay it back. This has helped some people talk about, former Olympians, whatever, talk about having mental illness. And I said, you know what, I'm going to talk about having mental illness because I never talked about it when it was going on, and I could talk about it now. So that was kind of the thing. We started. I opened up about it in a blog post. I know Lisa started opening up about it in blog posts, and then we started talking about it in videos like this, because we believe that it's not like we like dwelling on this aspect of life, but that we believe it's important, and have heard from many others who are in the place where maybe I was back then, where it's still kind of a dark secret.
And we'll put some of those. Like I had, you wrote an initial blog post, and then I wrote a blog post on how to support a spouse with depression. And we'll put some of those links in the description below. But that is how we then became involved in the Bell Let's Talk initiative, and ended up being what they call partners. So we're focused, or we were featured in different ad campaigns and billboards and all that kind of stuff. So we've really, we're now on the other side. It doesn't mean that we don't deal with it all the time, but meaning we found the hope Like we were able to, through therapy, through a lot of prayer, through a lot of communication, no longer feel like mental illness in our marriage defined us, or no longer feel like mental illness was something that incapacitated us. We still will feel it pretty heavily some days,
Yeah.
where Josh's anxiety can be challenging for him to, how would you describe it?
I would say,
Today, I mean, like
yeah, yeah,
today.
yeah, yeah. So, it's kind of funny, but again, like dealing with it at 32 years old, I thought again it was in the past, but then it did rear its head again, and now it's become more of a managed thing rather than like hope it goes away completely. I would say that it presents itself sometimes to greater or lesser degrees, and we respond. And where we might have responded at one point, I know Lisa, had her own challenge of telling people, like, it's like, oh, Josh doesn't feel up to coming to a family thing. Why is that? And then the pressure would be to say, oh, maybe he's sick or whatever, like make up an excuse. Now I think we're just a bit more at peace of like, it's okay to have mental health days, or
Hmm.
take a breather. It's okay to just, seek quiet. And
Hmm.
so yeah, so I would say we're in the managing phase of it. I'll tell you one funny story. I accidentally went off my antidepressant, my
This is
SSRI
recently. This
medication.
is while we lived here in Florida.
Yeah, and so I was basically taking, with a smudged label, I was taking a cholesterol medication instead of my actual medication, and that led to a series of really down weeks and not knowing why. And so it's when I think that maybe this thing is, hey, just like not so bad or like that, then you realize no, this is still a reality. Like it's managing mental illness because we had some pretty low weeks, and then we realized I wasn't taking the right medication and whatever. So yeah, so it's just a thing now. It's not a deep dark secret. It's just a thing, comes up in conversation. I don't feel ashamed about it when I talk to people about it, and that leads to really interesting conversations. So
So let's continue this conversation. And I'm just going to read in no particular order several of the questions that came in via my Instagram at Lisa Canning. Okay, so question number one: what can you do if the person you love doesn't want to get help?
yeah, it's the hardest question, I think,
Hmm.
because you can't really force somebody who is dealing with mental illness to get better. You can't force an addict to, seek recovery. Like that person has to confront this themselves. And I guess the thing I would say you can do is maybe gently point out changes that you've noticed in them. That was important for me. I remember a friend. We were out, at the pub, and my friend asked, about the job I was working in, fairly newish job, and he said, "You don't seem as happy at this job as your last job," and that kind of was interesting to me because I just didn't know that that would show. That kind of, came to mind. And then I just had another conversation with a friend, about how much I was, struggling with this or whatever. And, he just said, he reflected another thing back, like, oh, no, Josh, sounds like you think you're trapped. You're not trapped. And some of these things can make us, I guess, the person with mental illness realize, like, I'm, I'm responding to things differently than I normally would. Like, people
Hmm.
are noticing changes in me.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really big indicator. This is a question that I get most in my Instagram DMs as someone who supports someone with clinical anxiety and depression. And so the best answer I have is to get help yourself. So especially if you're feeling like, well, there's a couple things. Number one, if you feel like it's getting serious, you've got to tell somebody. Like if you feel like your partner is at risk of putting themselves in danger or anything like that, you've got to tell somebody. That's just like do not like pass go, like just tell somebody.
Hmm.
But if it's more like they are down and you don't have the language or anything you've tried previously isn't working, I always recommend go find yourself a counselor, because that the the practice of you being self-aware and um, dealing with your own emotions will help you with some skills and some tools
Hmm.
to deal with your spouse's emotions or your loved one's emotions.
Hmm.
I think no harm comes. You know what I mean? Like, I think the more self-aware we can be, the better. But one other practical thing I will say is I've heard it described that supporting someone, or when you're dealing with a mental illness, it's like pulling a thread on a sweater. So I'm familiar with anxiety and depression. There are many different kinds of mental illness. This is what I'm familiar with. So this is what I'm using as context. It's like when you pull a thread on a sweater and the sweater is unraveling, right? I think the role of the person supporting is not to like fix the sweater or knit a new sweater or like take the sweater off or like go to the store and buy a new sweater, although that's the temptation. But I really do think that the role of the person supporting is to help them to stop pulling.
Mm.
Like, literally, just like, I'm putting my hand on your hand and we're going to stop pulling that thread. I think the tendency, and this is just also my hardwiring, my personality, is to fix. But the fix can be more pressure. And I think the last thing someone with mental illness wants is more pressure. One other thing I'll say is what my experience has shown me is that the person with a mental illness doesn't see themselves the same way that everyone else sees them. They see themselves, these are words that Josh has used. I'm a burden. I'm a nuisance. You'd all be better off without me. I should just like leave you, whatever. Like, I've heard all of that, right? Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I didn't say that to you, like openly,
But these are thoughts.
yeah, but
like,
when probed, those I shared with you the thoughts.
These
but
are
yeah,
thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just our job, as difficult as it, to be honest, can sometimes be, to just like, let's just stop. Like, I'm just going to put my hand here and remind you of who you really are. Let's just stop pulling that thread. Anyway, so that is anything else to add to that?
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, but no, like it's, yeah, it may take time. I mean, especially if it's an ongoing thing. So for me, it was a notable contrast from a place where I was to then I was in this sort of new place. If it's something that you've suspected for a while in your loved one, that it's just kind of been by gradation sort of growing, then it might be difficult. But in reflecting to them how they are responding to things or how they seem based on how they maybe normally are. That's, I guess, there's, like you say, there's the reflecting about who they really are, and then also reflecting how they're responding might help them just to say, well, what would be the worst thing about maybe talking about this and talking out my feelings might be, you know, yeah, might be a thing. But if you're supporting a husband, it's like guys don't love going to counseling, right? Like they don't love the idea of, they might feel like a coming down a few pegs to have to talk to somebody about their emotions. So yeah, so it can be a bit of a difficult dance. Bernadette Dietrich asked, "How old were you when you started going on medication?" Well, when I was a teen, went on medication, and then wasn't on it for more than a decade. And
like
then
when we met, you weren't on medication.
I was on the medication. No.
Yeah.
And then in my early 30s, when I first experienced this sort of depression, I didn't go on any medication right away. There was a lot of counseling, and then I was trying to do a lot of exercise and took some time off work. And because things improved, I didn't go on medication at that time. The following winter, so these are winters happening in Toronto, it seemed to be resurfacing again. So at that point, my psychiatrist thought, you know what, we might be dealing with some seasonal affective disorder. And so I went on medication with the intention of going off eventually. But what I found is when I do go off, it is just very noticeable, the changes in mood. So yeah, so basically since my early 30s, 33.
How old are you now?
I'm 41 now, I think. Yeah, I'm
That's
41.
correct.
Yeah, just on my birthday. Yeah.
So you've been on medication for almost 10 years or over 10 years?
8 years
8
now.
years.
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good question related to what we were just talking about. How do you check in on someone's mental health without nagging? So I can say that in the beginning of my journey, understanding depression, I wouldn't call myself like the most. I was a nag, and not only was I a nag, I was a impatient fixer. Like, I was just like, Josh, fix this. Like, get it together. Like,
Right.
I did not even understand that mental illness was an illness. I really just thought, like, my husband is lazy and won't get up,
Right.
if I'm just being very honest.
Right.
I just understand it very differently now. And so, Josh, how do you check on someone's mental health without nagging?
Um, yeah, I think it's the art of the conversation, like that's a great question. I've never, I don't know if I've had to be in that position so I don't know if I know the answer, but
Well, I'm pretty sure you know what it felt like to be nagged.
oh yeah, I know I didn't like that.
So let's talk about that. Like,
Right.
let's just paint an example so it's really
Right.
clear.
Right.
Um, there would be a season where he wouldn't be able to get out of bed. And when I didn't understand what mental illness was, I just sort of pictured that as like laziness.
Right.
So I would just keep saying stuff like, get it together, like,
Right. Right.
get up, like very, and then to be a bit more, gentle on myself, like the less aggressive version of that would be at times just being like, well, have you called the counselor? Have you called the counselor?
Mm.
Have you called the counselor? Like, that probably wasn't that helpful.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I don't know. It's in a way, it's like trying to be empathetic for both sides. Like, it's not easy for either person to navigate your way out of this sort of whirlwind or whatever you want to call it, quicksand of
Mhm.
depression. So, for a normal person, tough love is not a bad thing. Hey, I need help with the toddler. Like,
Sorry,
come
when
on.
we say normal, we mean someone without clinical mental illness.
Right, right. So like, yeah, people could be being lazy, and you might, like you said, you didn't know what it was when it was happening, and I didn't know what it was when it was starting to happen. So it was hard because I would also internalize that as, oh, why are you so lazy? Like, come on, what's your problem?
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, checking in, I guess, getting back to the question, um, like trying to ask questions without conversation or without confrontation, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, it seems like how's your energy lately? It seems like you're a little bit more tired than normal. How do you feel?
Mhm.
Or yeah, like yeah, how do you feel when you're getting out of bed in the morning? Is it a little bit more challenging lately? Is this a bit of a funny season or whatever? So I guess asking questions would be the thing versus the nagging of like, um,
Have you called? Have you called?
right,
Have you called?
yeah, yeah,
Now, let me address this have you called business because um it's tricky. It requires a lot of, I'm just going to be super honest. It requires a lot of self-awareness on the part of the person supporting, which is why honestly my first go-to answer is to go to counseling yourself or go to some kind of place where you can, whether that's a mental health professional or a life coach or some kind of spiritual director who can help you deal with your own emotions. Because
hmm
the temptation is going to be, of course, like resentment. It's going to be, of course, like you're feeling drained, especially if you're a parent with a bunch of small kids and you might be taking more of that load. Like you might have a lot of emotions.
hmm
And so to be able to deal with your own is just such a paramount skill.
hmm
Anyway, but
hmm
that's everybody. Everybody
hmm
needs to be able to deal with their emotions. This is why
hmm
I care so much about personal development and coaching.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
but like for example, I know that it didn't work when I was like, well, have you called? Have you called? Have you called? Have you called? But then I would find other ways to be like, hey, like I just happen to be like, Googling whatever. Like, here's the number if it makes it easier for you to call,
right,
but without any pressure, without any intensity. The other
right,
thing I've learned about mental illness is that it's like allergic to intensity.
hmm
Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but
yeah,
this is just personal experience. I'm no clinical psychologist or anything like that. But when I would try to put more pressure and make it more intense, it just would make things worse. So I found through experience, I had to figure out ways to make it less intense. And so for me, it was invitation, like
hmm hmm
very simple, like, hey, I found the phone number if it makes it easier for you to call.
hmm
Um, hey, it looks like you might need a little like break right now. Why don't you step into the other room?
hmm
Or hey, like it's okay if you're not feeling well. And then especially for me and my temperament, it had to be like, hey, it's okay if you want to stay home. Like,
Hmm.
or it's okay if you don't want to have people over, we can cancel.
Right.
Whereas I think an older version of myself would have been like, there's no way we're canceling. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's just real stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Just another thought too, about, how can you speak to them and check in with them without nagging. So one thing I've told some friends I found who are experiencing some level of depression is that I think you have to find ways to find successes even when you are at maybe the lowest point you've ever been at. And for me, that meant, when when it came when I was 32, it meant like moving the goalposts. So
Hmm.
if my normal production was my workday and the
Hmm.
gym and
Hmm.
whatever, my production for this time would be, I'm going to try to go on the treadmill for
Yeah.
60 minutes. I'm gonna make sure I smile at my kids, and I'm going to try to find something to laugh at today,
Hmm.
and if I do those three things, that's going to be my win. That was kind of like my recovery period for depression. Is I was trying to get back into a little bit of fitness um, and like they say, smile therapy, all that stuff. But beyond that, it's like I gave myself a lot of grace.
Hmm.
So maybe one thing to ask somebody if they've acknowledged mental illness is like, what are your goals for today? And celebrate them with them,
Hmm.
and see that they're not necessarily feeling like every day is just mired in meaninglessness, but like helping them see that they have agency and can
Hmm.
achieve things would be something that
Yeah,
would be
those
helpful
small
too.
wins.
Absolutely,
There
yeah.
was a quote. I know I quote this in one of my blog posts that we'll put in the description after this live. Dr. Terry Ledford, if I'm not mistaken, and he would talk about starving the troll, like how depression loves like silence or sorry, like solitude. I mean, depression loves I forget. Anyway, but starve
Hmm.
all those things. So and some of those ways were like getting outside, like
Isolation.
talking to people,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
even if it's just a simple thing like get to the mailbox,
Hmm.
pick up the mail and get home. Anyway,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I always thought that was like starving the troll. Always thought that was a good
Yeah, yeah.
analogy.
Hung's question kind of Hung Lee says, I try to help him, but he keeps doubting my efforts. He said I'm passive aggressive, which I don't even understand what that means. He blamed me and said I'm dragging him down. What should I do? So I think we kind of been speaking to that a little bit, in that, um, yeah, we're trying to find ways to engage a conversation, but one that's affirming, and is positive and is helping them see, things that they're doing well. But if they haven't acknowledged something's there, then also finding ways just to sort of remind them that, or to point out observations you're making while reminding them that they are the person that you love and care for.
Hang, what you're saying is a very common comment I get in my DMs from people supporting. This is a very difficult thing to do, but it's necessary. And I don't know, I could speak at length about how, but to not take things personally. I think there's a season in mental illness where when it's really bad, the person suffering doesn't, it's just not the way they would typically act. They might say things out of their own frustration. They might say things with different colored glasses on, looking at themselves and looking at the world. And so I really encourage people to like not take it personally. It can be so difficult
Mhm,
to do that.
mhm,
I'm not trying to like sugarcoat it.
mhm,
For me, how I'm able to do that is I am a Catholic, and so I I simply just like understand that there's always hope regardless, even if there's suffering. And so my faith is what helps me to get through that. I think also understanding mental illness is how I'm able to draw, from that. Um, but it's just so important to not take it personally. But then on the absolute flip side of that, you have to take care of yourself. Like, and I think that's why I'm always recommending go and find your own counseling, because if you can't deal with those emotions, like those normal emotions. So if somebody says something that stings, I'm not for 1 second saying just like shove that under, like just like suppress that forever, because that's going to be a problem too.
mhm,
But to be able to have the self awareness of like, same way, like I don't mean to, sometimes I compare these situations to infants and toddlers, and I'm not trying to call my husband a toddler,
Right.
but you know how a toddler will do something that is so offensive to you. You know what I mean? They'll like throw a shoe at you, or you make them this amazing meal and then they throw it on the floor. Like, again, I'm not trying to compare my 41-year-old husband to a toddler, but my point is that it's easier with toddlers almost to like not take it personally.
Yeah.
You're kind of just like,
You're like, no, you don't really hate me. You're just saying that.
you're just having an obvious, like,
Yeah.
Emotional outburst as a toddler.
Mhm.
I like to just sort of think of it like that too. It's like there are things in some seasons of mental illness where there will be words said, and on my part too, to be totally honest, like where there will be words said that just perhaps in a different state of mind would not be said.
Right.
And so there's a very delicate balance of not taking it personally, but also making sure that your mental health is fine and getting the support that you need. I hope that is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Laura, my husband suffers from anxiety. I always try to help, but he doesn't want it. Do you have any ideas to get him to be more positive and learn to grow? Honestly, like the first place I begin is to understand that mental health is health. So and that will bring you so much empathy. I think that's the real underlying thing of everything for the person supporting is a attitude of empathy. So to understand that mental illness is an illness like any other is like the first place to begin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second place is the things that we're talking about, like reflecting back, like, hey, like I noticed, like, you weren't really that excited at, whatever, it's something that maybe normally would excite you. Like, is everything okay? Or like, hey, like I noticed you seem really down today. Do you want to talk about it? Like, and giving them a lot of empathy and a lot of space, which again, we keep bringing this up, like it requires us as the supporters to like man up in our skills, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess. So for me, it's an ongoing thing to actually learn about depression and anxiety. It's funny. It's like it's not like you kind of learn you have it and then you understand it. It's like you continue to learn and understand how it impacts different things and understand tactics and strategies to deal with it in the best way. I think we've talked about cognitive behavioral therapy. So recognizing the control that we have over our own thought patterns and how thoughts impact feelings.
Thoughts cause feelings. Like, so let's just unpack that really quickly, because I think that's something that can really help a supporter. So this is a fact. I did not make this up. Nobody made this up. This is neuroscience. When you think of something, it will cause a feeling. So for example, I host a webinar and it doesn't go like I anticipated. So then I say to myself, well, you're a failure. That is a thought. All that is a thought. But that thought will then cause me feelings of despair, frustration, self-condemnation, whatever, right? But very easily, I can also be like, that webinar didn't go well. What can I learn from it? That might cause feelings of hope, curiosity, creativity, like, so when the person that you love is down, they might be thinking, oh man, I snapped at my kid. That can lead to, I'm
a bad person.
I'm a bad father. Whoops. I'm sorry. I'm never going to change. Depression's always going to define me. And those thoughts are going to lead nowhere good. Right. But the thought of I snapped at my kid could also go this way. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do better tomorrow. Or, oh, I'm going to go give them a hug.
Right.
Or, like I like, for example, a script I use on myself is something like, you're a calm and loving mother and you had a little bump in the road. Like that leads to a whole bunch of other feelings, which again, empathy, like peace, freedom, like the opposite of self-condemnation. So I hope you can see where we're going here is that thoughts cause feelings and we can so much so control those thoughts. And if we can't control those thoughts, we can replace them almost like on autopilot in a way with other thoughts that can help in that situation.
Yeah. So to bring it back to Laura's question, One thing that you could possibly do is work in understanding your own thoughts, and even if you don't have clinical anxiety, your own response to things, by having perhaps grabbing a book on this topic. One that I read is called Mind Over Mood, and it looks at this thing about how thoughts impact our feelings. I've heard of another one somebody recommended to me called The Body Keeps Score, and it's about how anxiety, how it leaves a mark in terms of our physical well-being and
Oh
all that
yeah.
stuff. Um, but you could grab something on cognitive behavioral therapy or something on mindset and whatnot, so that you're learning about this thing in general, which will help you in caring for your spouse.
Yeah.
But also, if it's around the house, perhaps it might be picked up by your spouse, or just at least the knowledge is a bit more kind of readily available to you, to have conversations that might help them.
Okay, so Laura, it's so hard. Laura says it's so hard to be empathetic when he can be so mean, and it's been going on for years, so I feel resentful. How can I let go of the past? Honestly, Laura, like that's why I really recommend counseling or therapy or some kind of a coach or a spiritual director. If you need more help in that area, like feel free to DM me on Instagram at Lisa Canning, and I can point you in the right direction based on your situation. It's not like it's simple, but it's not simple. Okay. How do we forgive anybody who hurts us? You simply just forgive. Like, I don't mean to be insensitive. Like, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's it. Like, you simply forgive them. Again, my worldview, our worldview is influenced by the fact that we're Catholics. We're in this for life. Like, we're not going anywhere. We are married forever. And that influences how I respond to everything, I guess. You know what I mean? How we both respond to everything. I think that influences like the grace we give each other, like meaning forgiveness, like the slack we cut each other, I don't know, like.
But your feelings are valid, and I think it's you can accept the feelings and accept that a wrong was done, and that was not fair, and at the same time, so like honor your own feelings about it, but at the same time, you also have the ability to daily choose to cancel the debt that is incurred, and to say, I'm going to forgive him. Maybe he hasn't even apologized properly, but I'm going to forgive him, in love. And that is hard. We're not saying that's easy, right? But yeah, marriage is not easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's periods
Yeah.
or sometimes long periods where it's not easy at all. But yeah, I would just say it's not dishonest to forgive somebody. Like it's not being not true to your feelings. Acknowledge your feelings and let them have their say, and then you have choice over how you then move forward from that.
And this is why I believe in therapy and counseling so much, because that's a safe space for you. It's a safe space for you to be as honest and as frustrated and as whatever as you want. And I know, I saw one of the questions, it might have been on my Instagram, like the cost of going to therapy or the cost of going to counseling. And I totally get that. We got 8 kids. We have many, bills to pay. Like I totally understand that. But what's the cost of not? Like, to be honest, like that's like what I would say, like, what is the cost of not? And maybe there are creative ways you can go about it. Like maybe there's, I'd be curious if there are even bursaries or like stuff, different.
Yeah, look into in your area, charity supported or subsidized therapies. When we first went, I was paying I think like $15 an hour because it was a
sliding scale.
Yeah, like it
based
was
on need.
Yeah, so look at things like, I don't know if they're in every city, but Catholic Family Services was a thing for us in Toronto, Canada. But there are other Christian supported therapies, or perhaps state supported or sponsored therapies. And also depends if it's something severe for yourself or for your spouse, talk to your family doctor and ask them what's available, because there are things that are covered by different plans and whatnot. So
I think it's important to remember whether you share a worldview like we do that is Christian or not. So whatever worldview you have, we always have choice. Like you have a choice every single day in how you respond to any situation. Viktor Frankl, I love this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks in that book about how the Jews in the concentration camps The
He was
ones,
a prisoner in a concentration camp. So
right?
yeah.
Um, the ones that gave up hope perished, but the ones that continued, to find hope, like this was his personal account,
Hmm.
the ones that would continue to have hope would make it.
Hmm.
And obviously, it's a very simplified way I just described it, but I really recommend that book. If you are dealing with suffering, I find that book incredibly beautiful and insightful and helpful.
And hopeful. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay. So, Laura, to your last comment there about marriage not being easy and that it's so refreshing to talk about this, knowing that you're not the only ones. There are so many. Can I just tell you, my DMs are constantly filled
Hmm.
with both sides. Like,
Hmm.
and it's just, this is why we care about this day. Belle, let's talk. We care about um, continuing this conversation. And I think it's really important that we don't compare. I think it's so tempting, especially in a world where with social media, you're only getting like a sliver of someone's life, the one that they
The best side.
choose
Yeah.
to bring forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, it can be so tempting to be like, well, so and so, they're always out, or so and
Hmm.
so's husband doesn't deal with this, or so,
Hmm.
just like in your
Hmm.
own lane, like just
Hmm.
like blinders up in your own lane,
Hmm.
define success for yourself. And if you are having a struggle with that, like there are like there are so many resources available,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to thoughts,
Hmm. Yeah.
both free and not free, like
Yeah.
lots of options.
Yeah, thanks for the great comments, everybody. I wanted to address one by Bernadette. She said, "When you were a teen, what were the best things your parents did to help you?" This is important. I got a personal message from a mom the other day who was dealing with a difficult situation with a teen. I think the best thing they did was to get me to the right professional help. So they acknowledged when things were serious and got me to the right professional help, and they helped me by shining love on me and reminding me that that this was a temporary situation. Like the thoughts that I had were really like that. Life will never be good. Like there's no point in the future. Like you know, uh, no one's. I'm never gonna find someone who would actually love me. I just can't picture myself with a bright future. Like I think that's the thing. Why would any teen ever um, you know, like commit suicide? It doesn't make, in a way you could say logically, it doesn't make sense. They have their whole life ahead of them. And it doesn't make sense logically, but they're in a place of pain where they can't picture any light on the other side of the darkness they're experiencing. They can't convince themselves that it's real. So I guess what I would say is as loving a teen, like let them know that you see, like let them affirm that their feelings are real, and but that their feelings are not telling the whole story. Like they can't see around the corner of what's next, and they have to learn to trust in what other people see in them, and that this feeling will not be like this forever. Just, I guess I would just say help them by your time with them and listening to them and loving them. See that there's more to the picture than they're seeing in the present. So I don't know if that helps at all, but that's a thought.
Perhaps we can close here. Mental illness is just challenging. It's just that's it. Like it's
Hmm.
not, it's just not it's no picnic. Like it
Right.
is challenging. Um, but I think the antidote to it, beyond, I'm talking a bit more, what's the word? Metaphorically, I guess, or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously there's antidotes like medication, but what I'm trying to say is the antidote to it, in my humble opinion, is hope and connection. You can't ever give up on hope. I've been doing a lot of reflection on myself during coronavirus and all the things. Like, if you've been following along, you know that this has been a very interesting year for us. If you follow me on Instagram, anyway, I've talked about the different challenges we've had over the last year, in various places. And the thing that I will never, ever, even though sometimes it's hard, I will never give up on hope. Like, hope is what keeps you alive.
Hmm.
Hope is what gets you off the floor. Like hope is what gets you out of bed. Like
Hmm.
hope is the most important thing, in my humble opinion,
Hmm.
to cling to.
Hmm.
My faith helps inform this, but it also is just like I think I'm hardwired for hope in a way. Like I just
Hmm.
will never give up on hope. I will never give up on the that days can be brighter or that a
Hmm.
situation can improve.
Hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, and if I can just spin a positive on this too, like what one of the things that's neat about coming through any struggle in life, physical, mental, whatever, situational, is that you can gain something from the experience. And I would say Lisa is a person hardwired for hope, but she's more hopeful because of some of the things that we've endured in our
Yeah.
marriage.
I'm sorry.
No, no, go.
When you go through something challenging, it sucks in the moment, of course. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
we had a baby in hospital this year.
Hmm.
We suffered a very challenging financial situation this year.
Hmm.
We just like lots of things.
Hmm.
It's terrible in the moment. It's awful. And it can feel like there's no hope in the moment. But then when you have perspective, like when you're able to zoom the camera out
Hmm.
from that moment in time and see things more in like a timeline of your life,
Hmm.
we're now a year out of a baby being in hospital. We're now a year out of a very challenging financial situation. Like we're just,
Hmm.
you see like your resilience, you see how you've grown. You can see it, but
Hmm.
it's so challenging in that moment because all you're focused on is that moment.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay, so that's the hope piece.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sorry, you were
I
going
was
on.
just going to talk about connection.
Okay, go for it.
Are you
Yeah.
sure?
Yeah, we keep like inhaling at the same time. It's like we have a point, and then
So then the second point is connection,
okay.
like meaning you're not their adversary. No one's your adversary. Sometimes it can feel like your children are your adversary, but they're not. They're not. They're just children.
we're
Like
we're quite outnumbered by our
we're
children,
so
so
outnumbered.
yeah.
But the connection, like you love this person. You've seen this person in good times and in bad. Like I find it also there's a quote that somebody I think like create. I don't know who wrote this, but it's like I choose you. I choose you. I would choose you like again and again and again and again, right?
Hmm.
And so to just do all the things to increase that connection,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
date nights, lots of space to talk, physical intimacy, like know their love language, do things that's in their love language. Like the more you can understand your partner, I think the better. And that connection will never fail you. I don't
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. I want to pivot a little bit because I got an interesting message the other day, and it was somebody who was um, acknowledging that they had struggled with a mental illness for a very long time, but they had always kept it a quiet thing, and they were feeling a bit called to talk about it in a public way, and they wanted to know what are the downsides of that.
Hmm.
And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about on a day like this because it's really flippin' scary to reveal that kind of thing about yourself. I remember when I wrote that blog post, I wrote it very fast, but pressing like publish, that was a bit harder because it's like,
Hmm.
oh, this is going to be out there. And I was thinking, man, if people know that I had depression as an adult, like how is this going to affect future job opportunities?
Hmm.
How are people going
Hmm.
to look at me and see me as just being really weak?
Hmm.
It was just tough. And I'll say that having put that out there, as tough as it was and as raw as it felt for a few days afterwards, um, it is something I would never take back. Like it was. I'm glad I did that because when we share some of the things that are difficult for us, it can really create a bridge to somebody else who's in that kind of a space. And I'm so glad that people feel like they can say to me, "Hey, I know you've been open about this. I've been dealing with this, and this is how it's feeling." And da 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 da. Like people. Um, if you feel like I shouldn't tell anybody about this, you're dealing with this, and I shouldn't talk to anybody about this because then they're going to know this weakness or whatever. Like it may be like a life preserver for somebody. So I'm not saying everybody needs to publicly shout from the rooftops, "Hey, these are my particular struggles," but I think it's important to tell people that we love and people that are close to us this is what I've been dealing with, and this is how it feels, and sometimes it really sucks, and I'm in over my head, and um, but this is something about me that I wanted you to know, and that again, that can really help somebody, and the more that we do that, the less then we feel ashamed and suffer in silence. So yeah, so I would say, hey, I'm really glad that it's out there, as much as it still is not like something I would brag about. It's not like saying, "Hey, I've got big biceps." It's like,
Oh
no,
my gosh.
I have mental illness.
You are so funny.
But
But okay, can I just, and
yeah,
now we're really going to close
yeah,
because like,
yeah,
we
yeah,
gotta go. But
yeah.
um, also accept help. Like,
Right.
and this is, I have so much pride. I'll just be honest. Like, I
Hmm.
am full of pride.
Hmm.
And so I find it sometimes really difficult to ask for help and accept help, but to just accept it. Like, just people want to help. This is the
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
Like, when people suffer alone or struggle alone, and then you might tell somebody later, like, oh, yeah, I've had a really, really bad season. Like,
Hmm.
people get like upset because they're like, I would have helped you. Like, I
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
help you. It's
yeah.
not like a burden like on
Hmm.
other people. If they can't help for whatever reason, then they can't help. But like,
Hmm.
there are a lot of people out there who want to help, and it's a gift to allow them to help,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
Anyway, so
Yeah. Yep, and it doesn't have to be. I see Zato made in the comments. I don't like talking about it because I don't want to bring others down. It doesn't have to be bringing others down. I was thinking of a basketball player, DeMar DeRozan. I think it was him. So I hope I'm not wrong. But he tweeted out, "Man, this depression getting the best of me." And a lot of people were really like proud of him for that. That he actually like that athletes are starting to speak out about that a little bit,
mhm.
to show that dimension of themselves beyond just the physical prowess of sports. So I would just say, you don't have to do it in a way that's like gonna necessarily overwhelm people, but like, when someone checks in or invites you out to something, you know what, I'm having a rough week mental health wise, or it's been a rough season or whatever, like Lisa says. I would say just being open to the extent that you're comfortable, and don't but again, there is a lie that a person with depression feels, which is that they see themselves primarily as a burden, and you're
Mhm.
not a burden. You're not a
You
burden.
are not. All right. So I'm going to bring this fun conversation to a close by reminding you that today is Bell Let's Talk Day. And so there are a couple ways that you can support this initiative. Number one, every time that you use the hashtag Bell Let's Talk. Oh my gosh, hold on. I got to make sure that it's correct. Hold on.
Yeah, that's correct.
Hold on. Wait. It's not.
BELLLETSTALK. Yeah, every time you use that, 5 cents goes towards a mental health initiative. They've given, I think, tens of millions of dollars to support different mental health initiatives. Maybe it's even more than that. But every year, this is where two great things happen. One, people talk about it and share words of encouragement, share personal experiences. I've got friends who I never knew they had any mental health issues until this day. So that happens. It raises awareness and reduces the stigma. And number two, it raises funds
A lot
for
of
mental health
funds.
initiatives.
The
So
second way you can support this initiative today is to watch the official Bell Let's Talk video, and you can go to letstalk.bell.ca or go over to their Facebook or their Instagram. Every time this is watched, Bell will donate 5 cents more towards mental health initiative. Every time you use Bell Let's Talk hashtag on Twitter, every time you use the Bell Let's Talk Facebook frame, they'll donate 5 cents. Every time you watch the official video, like I said, on Instagram, on Snapchat, uh, using the Snapchat filter. The official video is also on YouTube. Oh my
mhm.
gosh, it's on and on TikTok.
Yeah.
There's many different ways. And then text messages. So for those of you who are in the for every text message sent by a Bell wireless customer, so not iMessage, a text message, Bell will donate 5 cents more
Cool.
towards mental health
Cool.
initiatives. So those are a whole bunch of ways that you can get involved in this initiative today, raise some funds, raise some awareness. If we did not answer your question today, feel free to put it in the comments, and let's just continue this conversation. I don't know. We just, there's always hope. I don't know how else to say it. There's always hope. And there's no need to suffer or struggle alone.
Hmm. Amen. Man. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for the great chats. As Lisa said, keep up hope. And
And if you can think of someone who might benefit from this video, just feel free to hit that little arrow button below and share it. I can't tell you, I know it's I'm grateful for this space. I know many of you have come onto the Lisa Canning little world because of videos of this nature. So I just want to tell you that, while we might not ever have an opportunity to meet in person, thank you for being here. Thank you for, for those of you who are supporting someone with mental illness, thank you for everything you do. It's sometimes a lonely road, but you're not alone. And while I don't always get back to every single message, quickly, you're not alone. There's a whole bunch of people who are exactly like you and know how it feels. And yeah, send me the messages. I do get back to them eventually, just not always right away. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, guys. Happy Bell Let's Talk Day. Bye.